After watching several videos from content creators, it would seem some do not have the passion for Opera Omnia anymore, and after looking at Joesephy's Twitch chat that he presented in his The End of 2022 for the Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, it would seem some players are not satisfied with the current state of the game. But why? Is it because of the current era of Shinryu? Are characters not feeling as unique as they used to be, or are the bosses not as dangerous or difficult enough? Overall, some aren't happy with Opera Omnia at the moment. Some creators have even left content creation due to them not having the passion to create content for the game anymore, or their interests lay elsewhere. As an example being Forty the Broadway Saint, who I consider to be the titan of Opera Omnia content. However, he has stated that he would not be creating content for the game anymore, but would rather play it in private, and he has posted some community posts showcasing his pulls. Joesephyr is another large content creator for Opera Omnia, and in the video I mentioned earlier, he feels that his passion for the game has dwindled too, and by judging by the sentiments displayed within his Twitch chat, some aren't very pleased with the game. So what is the real reason behind the excitement for the game dying? Let's divulge into the possible reasons of Opera Omnia's death of enjoyment for those who are not feeling so good about this game anymore. While I personally like the concept around Shinryu era, it is without a doubt that bosses do not seem as threatening or menacing as they used to be. Looking back at previous difficulties, bosses back then had some kind of nuance to them, especially when Cosmos switched to Chaos era and people saw the changes. I remember Garland's event when it first came out and actually feeling scared to tackle the Colorless Queen, a boss that still resonates with me as, well, let's have Alistair explain that better.
Well, aside from the fact that she's a complete and utter bitch.
But with Shinryu era, things have changed. The characters gain new weapons and the bosses, while they do sometimes have new things to them, it is nothing we haven't seen before. An example of this comes the ancient god from Pandemonium, Spiritus. Take 10 turns after the boss has reached 60%, or rather below 60%, you can't do any damage to it. But we have seen this mechanic before. Where, you might ask? Transcendence 4, specifically the middle gate. Yes, some bosses have displayed that you may have new mechanics that could stand out, but it's not enough. Some bosses do actually stand out in terms of having a faster force gauge, such as the Medusas when Jack Garland is released, Transcendence 12, Transcendence 13, and the dragons from Shiva's Spiritus. However, with characters gaining force weapons, many bosses have been a cakewalk compared to previous difficulties, and thus the fights just seem bland and tepid, not providing any unique experiences with bosses such as the Colorless Queen I mentioned before. And with the introduction of force echoes when Garnet gains her force weapon, bosses get slapped left and right. And some bosses do have HP gates in JP, only to be stomped regardless. I do believe that the devs want to try out new themes with bosses, but not much has come to light in terms of showing that. Let's take a look at Shiva's Spiritus Dragons for example. While the fight is catered to Edgar, who gains his FR and burst for that event, the dragons do display some sort of unusual mechanics within the fight itself. Personally, things aren't too boring for me, but in global it is a different story since I am going up against the same bosses I've faced before in JP. Overall, bosses aren't as interesting as they used to be due to how easily they can be defeated, and the player can just get their resources to max out their force enhancement passives and be on their merry way. How thrilling! Only it's not. While force weapons are somewhat new to global and are considered old tea in JP, the characters themselves do not change in terms of bringing something new to the table, something I have also come to see in JP. With the restrictions of bursts being lifted, to which every character will be getting a burst weapon, this has hindered excitement to me personally ever since Locke gained his burst weapon. Now, there are exceptions to this. Leave me alone. Characters feel the same. I hate to point this out, but Sid Reigns is an example. I love this character so much, I really do, but what has actually changed with him? What has really changed with his kid? Let me give you some time to think about it. Exactly, not much. Characters mainly gain upgrades to their kits with more HP and brave hits. Maybe they do get something new here and there and in between, but not much changes with them and they mostly stay the same. Some reworks may feel different in the short term, but in the long term, not really. Opera Omnia has an abundance of characters from the franchise, and while I have given up on Red 13 coming into the game, new characters do not feel new to me anymore, and maybe some feel that way too. Remember when characters were coming out every month before Shinryu and Euphenia Plus? A rush of serotonin will surge for people finally getting the chance to play their favorites from the Final Fantasy series, and others not liking some characters joining in. With JP now slowing down content and literally vomiting out new bursts, sorry for that unfortunate image, I have a feeling that level 100 could showcase the difference with characters and their kits, but we will have to see once that bridge has been crossed. I like to think that Shinryu era makes characters feel like the more powerful generic versions of themselves. While still great, they do feel the same as before, which is a shame considering that every character is unique in some way, many doing different things, but for some this may not be enough. According to Herbert Friedenberger, a German-born psychologist, burnout refers to the extinction of motivation or incentive, especially to one's devotion to a cause or relationship fails to produce desired results. This definition may as well perfectly sum up why many do not feel that Opera Omnia is giving them the satisfaction desired. And when looking at the previous two parts of this video, they could just be a contributing factor or both can come into play for some players. Burnout is something that everyone can go through, and some have experienced this time and again. I know I've experienced burnout, and towards video games it can happen. Opera Omnia is no exception to this. While some still enjoy the game, myself included, some may have burnout on the game at this very moment. Shinryu fights may not be enough or are bland and not rewarding enough. Satisfaction from these fights do not warrant excitement or joy. They are merely looked over and become a forgotten memory. Characters are merely the same, with shiny new toys behind them and more brave and HP hits, but I'm sure some players do not even find this remotely wonderful. I myself feel that when I do play this game, my priorities shift. I record the audio and the video, I edit it, then I release it, and so on and so forth. I feel that I am obligated to make guides for a new event and wanting to help people through them, but by making the guides a priority that was born from pure boredom, some things have gone past me, and by the time I want to get to those said things, they are long gone. Content creation becomes number one, everything else becomes number two, and that could be something that many are feeling. Spending a lot of time on Opera Omnia and not focusing on the things that could be considered important or are important but are ignored. If there is one thing I can tell you, you should always do what makes you happy. And if you feel that something is not for you anymore, stop. It isn't healthy spending time on something you no longer enjoy, and you have every right to focus on what makes you happy in life. Another case could be priorities. From 40 wanting to do other content and not desiring to make opera content anymore, to Lids 87 wanting to focus on more important things in life such as his family. Priorities are a big deal in our lives, both in the workplace and in our personal lives. I have missed out on a total of 5 global events and 2 guides recently due to having personal problems that I have had to deal with, and I know I'm not the only one. Content creation for me is something I enjoy mainly because I love to edit, but there comes a time where our priorities shift, especially from a mobile game that may not see 7 years or so, I don't know, unless the devs decide to revitalize the game in some way. Maybe the global devs could do a global first something, I don't know what, or the JP devs wanting to release new characters, maybe introduce a new difficulty, or even releasing the level 100 cap to characters, something that could potentially pique people's interests. Well, there we go, another unnecessary deep dive into something I didn't need to do, but in my case, those are the possible reasons of Opera Omnia not being enjoyable anymore. I love the game, so I'll still continue to play and create content for it, but to those who do not wish to play any further, to those suffering from burnout, To others not enjoying Shinryu era, I wish you the happiness you deserve. Take care of yourself. That is more important than some mobile game with some characters for us to sim for. You know I'm right in this.